Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. Now, I have to tell you, I am very excited about my guest today. I have known her for more than 30 years in a personal way, and then in a professional way, peripherally, although I've seen some of her work. I just saw the most extraordinary performance looking at the body of her work just a week or so ago. Let me tell you about our guest. She is Dianne McIntyre. She has a career spanning 5 decades with choreography for dance, theater, television, film, and opera. Many awards she's received, including a 2022 Dance Magazine Award, a 2023 Martha Hill Lifetime Achievement Award, a United States Artists Fellowship, and the Doris Duke Artist Award. She has choreographed scores of concert dances, 4 Broadway shows, 2 operas, 35 regional theater productions, 3 films, 3 television productions, and she has created 5 original full-length dance dramas. Her company of dancers and musicians, Sounds in Motion, toured extensively, and her Harlem studio was a central hub of creative activity for many years. Companies performing her work include the Dance Theater of Harlem, Groundworks Dance Theater, DCDC. She has taught at the American Dance Festival, Bates Dance Festival, and Jacob's Pillow, where she is the co-director with Risa Steinberg of the Hicks Choreography Fellowship Program. McIntyre's other honors include a Guggenheim Fellowship and 3 Bessies. Her new work, In the Same Tongue, premiered at Walker Arts Center in October of 2023, with the New York premiere at Apollo's Victoria Theater this past April, and I was there. McIntyre has received 2 honorary Doctorate of Fine Arts degrees from SUNY Purchase and from Cleveland State University. She has a BFA in dance from The Ohio State University, and her mentors include Elaine Gibbs Redmond and Gus Solomons Jr. It is my honor to welcome my dear friend, Dianne McIntyre.
Thank you. Thank you, Harriette.
I'm
It is,
so happy to be with you, Dianne, and so proud of you.
oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you. Yay.
So let's start with this amazing production that I got to see. By the way, it's called the New Apollo Stages. So there's that giant theater that everybody knows. And now inside of the newly created Victoria Hotel, which is called Renaissance Hotel, there's an Apollo wing. And yours was the first dance production to grace one of those stages, and it was just magnificent to be there. How did you create this work, and what is the meaning of the work?
Okay. So this work, I had been working on it for several years. I was going to say decades, but actually
But it
for
feels like
several.
it's decades of work in there, right?
Yes, yes. It's a culmination of several decades. And the work called In the Same Tongue, my original idea of In the Same Tongue is the dance and the live music coming together as one entity. That's been one of my signatures, working together with a very creative music and very creative dance, merging in a live way. Sometimes the connection is very composed, very choreographed, and there are times when it's very spontaneous. So the dancers and musicians have to be ready for that connection. So they're all one unit. And then as I developed the work, I had other ideas about In the Same Tongue. First of all, like sometimes we just speaking to each other as people, sometimes the energy with which we talk to one another can be very engaging and embracing, and sometimes it can be very abrasive. So, in that way, are we speaking in the same tongue? Are we speaking in a very loving way or compassionate way? So, that's another element of the piece. And it can be bigger too. It could be like countries speaking in the same tongue or not speaking in the same tongue. So all those elements come into it. And then sometimes there's we have some silent sections. where the dancers are communicating in silence but very much connected. And then were times where it's just the music and not the dance, and the musicians are communicating with each other.
It was
And we
beautiful to
that
see the
that's the gist of the piece.
yeah, it was beautiful to see the live musicians performing on stage and the dancers being in tune with them. I mean, a lot of times you have the music that's taped. And then that's nice too, but it's not the same as having those live musicians on stage. And that's a pretty small theater, so they were very close and,
Yes.
closely working together. Now you talk about this in the same tongue, and given all the things that are happening in the world, it just makes me think of some of the challenges that people are facing where they're not in the same tongue. Our understanding of humanity is being challenged, how we treat each other. How well, I know that you do because I've been researching your work, but how do you draw upon what's going in the world to share it within these performances?
Well, what happens is that I go along day to day, either walking, driving, in communication with people, not thinking about, well, whatever I see today is going to be turning into a dance performance. I don't think like that. However, if things are recurring, that there are things in life that I see recurring either to me or to what I see around me, then it starts bubbling up into this could be something that is spoken about in terms of theatrical dance music. Um, but it comes in different ways. It could be something that I read. One time, I noticed that people were not so. Sometimes people completely are not aware of what's going on around them. It was bugging me that people were crossing the street. At least it's in Cleveland where I live. They're crossing the street oblivious that there's a car coming right by them, or that somebody just dropped a whole package of fruit or whatever right on the ground and somebody just walks by. It's not like they are being harsh, they're oblivious. So I still have that piece I haven't done yet. It's going to be called Oblivious.
Ah, that
Oblivious.
is powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful because I mean those are two very simple but direct examples. And when you extrapolate it out, there's so many things that people are oblivious to in our world. Like this is happening right in front of your face. Why can't
Yes.
you see it?
Yes. Related to one section of this particular piece, I'll tell you a note that I gave the dancers. There's one section that where the dancers go into couples, and in the couples they have a struggle with each other. They
Mhm.
actually struggle with their voices, the way they're abrasive in their voices, and then they actually do a struggle with each other physically until the struggle gets to its peak. And at the end of that struggle, the people, they just stop as if something hits them either in their minds or in their heart. And what ends the struggle, I don't tell them why they separate and open up into just a more openness about each other. But one day when we did it at right before we were at Apollo, we were at Duke, and one of the dancers had such a profound way of expanding after that struggle. I asked him, "What are you thinking?" He said, "When I looked at that person, I saw that he was me.
Mm,
I saw that there was no difference between myself and the other person." And then I was okay.
that's powerful.
Yes. And I told the dancers in a recent rehearsal, I said, this could be your brother, your sister. This could be somebody you never met before. This could be even nations.
Exactly.
And some of the nations struggling today, I said, are actually the inhabitants of those different nations are actually distant cousins.
Uh, that gives me chills because you can go back to all of the ancient spiritual texts, pick one, you go
Yeah.
back far enough and you see family members warring against each other, and you wonder why in the world is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
And to whether it was conscious or not that appears in your work, and the dancer felt it, so I bet audiences may,
Mm-hmm.
different audience members may have a moment of awareness. Wow, this is happening, and there could be another way. And
Mm-hmm.
art creates space for
Mm-hmm.
us to explore and experience conflict differently than I think anything else. I think people feel a little bit more freedom to fully experience it when they are participating in or observing an art piece.
Yes, I feel that too, because sometimes people can listen to lecture after lecture. And it's like, yes, I get that intellectually. That is really important. We have to address these issues, even if they're not big political issues. They could be about any, it could be anything. Yes, this is important. The thing is, if they see it in art, visual art, music, theater, then something can explode inside their mind. Say, that is something like, I get it. I
Right.
get it in a visceral way. And this
Mhm.
is the value of art. Even if the artist isn't expecting people to take it in that way or a certain way, the
Yeah.
artist is digs in, experiences what comes up from inside their own being, and then it comes out as a gift to the world.
And you have spent a lot of time with your work doing a tremendous amount of research as you create pieces. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that whether it's something you created or somebody else's piece that you are working with, you've done a lot of work in the space of African American history and life.
Yes.
Can you talk about making that choice and some examples of how that has manifested for you?
Okay. So I have been always interested in very what you call, well, I'll go back farther. I always have done our own social dances. I say our own African American social dances from when I was growing up. It was just natural. When I grew up in Cleveland, everybody danced. Even if a person was what you might call a nerd, very studious and kind of standoffish, they danced too. Everybody danced, and you did the most recent dances, and we were some dancers in Cleveland. Okay, so that was always inside of me. Then my father used to show me old timey dances they did back in the 30s or even in the 20s when he was a child. And I just gravitated to those dances. They were inside of me. Then, when I was first came to New York, I worked at the Library of Performing Arts at Lincoln Center in the dance collection. It was called the dance collection then. And there I was a person helping catalog. I asked to catalog some of these older dances and dances from peoples from other cultures, Asia, Africa, and also early dances here from this country of African American people. I even read about people who were enslaved and what the missionaries and the enslavers said about the dances, which was like horrific. However, I could, because they're talking about the savages dancing. However, from their descriptions, I was able to draw what I felt the dances were like, even though it was a negative description and it was all about the entertainment for the so-called masters. Somehow I just in my early 20s I became absorbed in historical dance of our people. I put it in some of my choreography, and then theater directors and theater companies started calling me to offer that type of authenticity in their theater work. The first was the Negro Ensemble Company.
Hey, everybody, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole, and we are talking to choreographer extraordinaire Dianne McIntyre. All right, Dianne, you were telling us about process and about African American storytelling and the things that you have learned. In particular, you were talking about the enslavers and the different relationship that they had with the enslaved. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes, so I began to extract from what the enslavers said about what the dance was like of the people who they called their property. Even though their words were not complimentary, I could kind of extract from their words what the dance must have been like. Okay, because we had no photos, no film back then. And we had early film of Thomas Edison in the late 1800s. And he actually first filmed Black people dancing.
Didn't know that.
Yes, yes. So some very, very early, there was a man named Ernie Smith. And Ernie was a collector of African American dance wherever he could find it, all over the world. And his collection, first he had it in his apartment, then he gave it to the Schomburg, and now I believe it's at the Library of Congress.
Hmm.
So after I was doing my own research, some people started calling me, theater directors started calling me because they knew I had this interest and this experience in African American dance, even before we had actual um, knowledge of what the dance was, say before the 20th century. So
Hmm.
the first one I was called to do was the Great McDaddy with the Negro Ensemble Company, I believe in 1974. So in there, I incorporated what historical Black dance. However, it's a combination of the history dance and my own creativity, what I feel it must have been like, and also how it merges with the story. And over the years, I've done a lot of that particular work in theater and then also in some of my own dance. It's one of my loves. I love and also the music that connects with that.
I was about to say, because you have this convergence of history, dance, and music, and your company that you founded in 1972, Sounds in Motion. I mean, from the very start of you having a formal company, you married those things.
Yes, I married them. Uh, I married them because when I was in university, this is also, there are two different ways that I come to the music. When
Hmm.
I was in the Ohio State University, we had two guest artists, Judith Dunn and Bill Dixon. He was in the so-called avant-garde jazz area. He was a trumpet player called new music. She was a choreographer and a dancer formerly with the Merce Cunningham Company. They worked together as a unit. I love their working together as a unit. They both taught us. They taught us improvisation, composition, and she taught technique classes. What I jumped off after classes with them was their collaboration, dance, and music. However, because she came from a Cunningham tradition, where Merce
Hmm.
Cunningham's sound and music is not connected in a way that some audiences can see the connection. It's not like he purposely did not merge dance and music as a connected. Sometimes it would be different. I don't want to speak on what he does. Anyway, they were not necessarily connected. They were in the same space at the same time and inspired each other. I wanted to do dance and music as one, so that the
Right.
dancer is moving as a voice and the musicians are moving as dance, and they are connected almost like one band.
Hmm.
where one sound comes, the dance continues that sound.
And,
So
go ahead.
so I said, yes, somehow I'm going to have live music in every one of my concerts, even though I don't use all live music in a whole concert, but a lot. And
It's powerful.
I've always traveled with the musicians as part of my own work. Now, when I do work on other dance companies that are not set up to have live music, then I use recorded music.
Mhm. You know, you in speaking about the power of the words with the music, with the dance, I think about someone you worked with so often, Ntozake Shange, who was a true wordsmith. I mean, just I was around her a few times over the years, and you just feel like she was anointed. That like the the heavens came through her with some of the things that she was able to share with us. And while most people are aware of for Color Girls who considered suicide when the rainbow was enough, she did a ton of work, a
Yes.
ton of work, and you worked with her on a number of these pieces. Uh, Tell us about working with such a creative genius, especially given the way that you like to work.
Okay. So Intozake Shange is a person I met when she first came to take classes at my studio. That was in the mid 1970s. At that time, she came with her associate, Paula Moss. They had just come from the West Coast and they wanted to take dance classes. They had heard about my company. So I didn't know at the time that she was a writer. People in this part of the country or in New York had not heard of For Colored Girls, nor had they heard of her. So as she developed her work while she was taking my classes, eventually she brought together this work for Colored Girls. And with her friend Paula Moss and several other women, some of whom were part of the experimentation of that piece. Some of them were part of my dance class. After she did that first work and went to Broadway, because we always were friends, then her her director, Oz Scott, invited me to do their next work at the Public Theater, which was called Spell Number 7. This was the first work that Intozake and I worked on very closely together. And how it evolved was that there were a series of poems that she wanted to be in this particular choreo poem. That was the name of the plays that she did. They were not plays, they were choreo poems, theatrical poetry and dance. The poems would be there, which she had written either recently or in the past. And a from the poems, choreography and staging emerged out of the poetry. This is to say that it was not a choreo poem or play on the paper right away. It developed as we worked together. And as she saw how this particular section's working and thou with her poetry, then she would know the next day, oh, let me bring in this poem. This will flow here. And that's how we started working directly together. And after that, over the years, until the year of her passing in 2018, we were always doing something. Sometimes it was a bigger production and a bigger audience. Sometimes it was in a club, in a loft with 11 people there. Sometimes a big place, 500, big. She was, as you say, a wordsmith. The way the words filtered through her, it was really divine. It was a gift she
It
had.
was. It
She
really
could
was.
see a situation, and the way she would expound on that situation is like, how could she think of it like that? And there's also so much truth in everything she shared. And when she was really her everyday person, sitting, relaxing, talking, da, 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 it wasn't like somebody would say, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to be talking with Intezaki Shange. She's such a brilliant mind with all of these ways. She has these poetic ways of speaking." When you just talk to her, it's like, "Yes, well, what are we going to do about this? Da, 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 da. Yes, well, let's go over to that restaurant. How about that?" It was, it
She
wasn't,
was like homegirl. She was just
yes, she was
regular.
homegirl. She was
Yeah.
homegirl and could talk with anybody and everybody would be delighted being with her. And there are times she's very kind of shy, especially in big gatherings where she was not a speaker or lecturer or teacher. Brilliant teacher, which I got to see her in Florida with her students. I was like, okay, Zaki, in a more quiet social event, um, she could be more quiet then. She
Mhm.
was I was crazy about Intezaki. We were very good buddies
She
for
was
over all
amazing,
these. Mm-hmm.
and I had the opportunity to interview her,
Mm-hmm.
a few years before she passed away, and she was very open about having I think she suffered 3 strokes,
Yes.
and she was incapacitated for quite a while. Yet, and I think this is important to point out to people, so I believe this month is National Stroke Awareness Month. Uh,
Oh,
she never gave up hope ever. She was like,
no.
"I am going to rebuild my being to the best of my ability." And she told me that at the point when she had to relearn how to speak because the speech had left her with the strokes, uh, Maya Angelou gave her some children's books that she had written and said, practice reading these out loud. And
Mm-hmm.
this will help you to regain your speech. And I think like the love filtering through Maya Angelou and then
Mm-hmm.
these beautiful books, she just remembered it as something. And she was telling it to me because she was speaking.
Oh,
It was
yes.
beautiful. It was
Yes.
really something.
Yes.
So I want to let me remind folks, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole, and we are talking to Dianne McIntyre about her career, about just loving people and sharing the stories of who we are and how we've come to be who we are. And this permeates Dianne McIntyre's work. And so I'm just so honored to have her here so that we can explore this with her. Dianne, you've just worked with a number of people. You talked about collaborating with Ntozake Shange, another great artist who will be in the history books forever, August Wilson. You
Yes.
worked with him. Many people these days are only aware of his body of work because he's passed away some years ago. You got to work with him and his work when he was alive and posthumously.
Yes.
Tell us
Yes.
about and August Wilson, as a playwright, documented the history of Black people in this country very methodically through his work. What was it like for you to work and collaborate with him?
Okay. So this is a very good question. Thank you for that. Yes, I have the good fortune to have actually been in the same theater, in the same rehearsal hall with August Wilson. So, usually, if you are a choreographer or composer, you are working with the director of that piece. Once in a while, the playwright will be there. It was different from with Intezaki. Okay, we're shifting. Okay, because she was the writer. I was working then both with Intezaki and Oz Scott, and then
Right.
later sometimes just Intezaki and myself. We've just put the things together. Uh, the with the first time I got to actually, I was always a fan of August Wilson from when I first saw his work. A director named Marion McClinton, he invited me to do the choreography for a short part of the play called King Hedley II, which was the way August Wilson developed his works. Well, there were several theaters around the country that would be what you would call the preview theaters of the work until it got to Broadway. His work was so stellar and so much appreciated that these theaters would promise to do his work until it got to the Broadway stage. So Marion McClinton, with whom I had worked on a piece, I worked on a piece with him at Syracuse Stage called Death and the King's Horseman. He told me that he and August had worked. He was, at one time, he was August Wilson's main director. He told me that he and August had been working on this section in the play in King Hedley that was a waltz. He said they thought that the actors could develop it themselves, but August and Marion decided it needed a choreographer. I didn't know that August Wilson had seen my choreography in Death and the King's Horseman. He must have told Marion, get her. I'm like, whoa. I found that out later. So we're in rehearsals. I would overhear August Wilson and Marion chit chat about this and that, different parts of the play. I can't remember what city we were in first, starting California, Boston, Illinois, went to 5 different theaters. And I was there in their second place, the second theater. So one day we did this part with what I saw written in the play, in the script. I try to always follow what the script says. So I'm doing what the script is saying. And then he says to me, I don't know where Marion was. He was not there at the time. He said, he or she, one of the characters, is not really doing anything. They need to do something about the dance. They need to do da 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 da. So whatever he's saying, I'm like, oh, okay, let's do that. I got direction from August Wilson how he saw the dance, and I shifted that way. That was like, okay. And talking with him was very regular, down to earth. And he shifted somewhat the way he wrote that section after he
But
mentioned
because he collaborated with you.
Yeah, after he wrote that, after that section. And for August Wilson, when he has a song or a dance inside of his play, it's not just for what you call divertissement in opera. No, inside of that dance or that music, something is going to jump off that helps change the whole trajectory of the play. So the 2 pieces I worked on with August Wilson, one after he had passed, the dance had to come to such a pitch, even though it was fun, had to come to such a pitch that something broke in it. And then King Hedley, that's what happened. They were doing a waltz. A waltz was supposed to be just, oh, wow, isn't this lovely? The waltz, the one who is the mother and her fiance, they're waltzing together. And then she goes into a whole reverie. Leslie Uggams was the one who did it best. She had to go into a whole reverie about and the dance gets so happy and so free, even though she's dancing with her partner, and it comes out of her mouth while she's dancing about who taught her how to dance like this, which was a rival to the person she's dancing with. He like, what? It had to get to that pitch. It had to get to that pitch in terms of the movement that she's so in that reverie. August Wilson writes it like that. Some people don't see that. They say, like in the Juba, which we did in Joe Turner's Come and Gone. They just I don't want to put anything. All choreographers see it different ways, but that Juba in Joe Turner's Come and Gone, it has to get to a pitch in such a way that the character, who's the father of the little girl, has to come in like, what? What? And usually the dance or whatever is very joyous, but it causes a shift, and then everything in the play shifts from and out. I was so honored to be able to receive that understanding directly from him and
Mhm.
also to carry that forth in the next piece I did, where he was not there presently because he had passed, but to understand what he means when he puts those type of music, dance in his, also because that's part of us African American people. We're going to dance, we're going to sing.
And the crescendo is so important. So for
Yeah.
you as a choreographer, as you are looking at that work, whether it is August Wilson's work or that Douglas Turner Ward is who made Nat Turner's Come
Yes.
and Gone. And by the way, his theater was what?
The Negro Ensemble Company, which
Which
continues
was
today.
so important uh,
Yes.
of an institution that started, was it in 1968?
Yeah, I think in 68. And so
Wow.
many actors that we know have
Yes.
come out of the Negro Ensemble Company and out of the New Federal Theater, which is where For Colored Girls had its start with Woody King. I can't tell you the people that be like, oh yeah, I know the actor, I know so and so, I know this one, I know Denzel, I know um, this
Yeah.
one and that one. That's where they started in New York as theater actors.
As theater
Those,
actors in these Black theaters, which a lot of
yes,
people don't even realize
yes,
that they existed and exist to this day.
that's
So
right.
Diane, I want to talk about that because you
Then we have Penumbra. Penumbra is in St. Paul, Minneapolis.
ah,
A long time, August Wilson lived there and started his works there at Penumbra.
I didn't realize.
Yes. So that's
Wow.
important to know
Because
too.
he was from Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Uh, and part of the reason why I know that, my mother's brother, Wendell Freeland, lived in Pittsburgh for all of his adult life.
Mm.
And in Jitney,
Yes.
there's an attorney who is mentioned in Jitney who's going to come and help the Jitney drivers, and he was named Wendell Freeland. Uh, my uncle was a really prominent lawyer in Pittsburgh, and August Wilson names him in this play. And we're like, "You're talking about Uncle Wendell?"
That is fabulous.
It was
Oh my
amazing.
goodness.
He was such a special person, and he took care of people, especially in our community. So that was really something special to be aware of. I wanted to ask you
He
about
didn't even
Harlem.
change the name.
I didn't change the name. Didn't change the name.
He gave a nod to him.
He really
Beautiful.
he intentionally gave a nod to him. I want to talk to you about being in Harlem. You know, I live in Harlem now. Harlem
Yeah.
has changed so dramatically. When you came to Harlem and started your company, Sounds in Motion, in 1972, there was a lot of artistic energy there and people creating, collaborating, kind of supporting each other. Can you talk about what it was like to be a creative in Harlem when you began?
Okay. Well, I lived in Harlem from when I first came to New York City because I had relatives who lived there. And that was, it seemed homey, neighborhood like. Okay. So I lived in Harlem. So when I looked around for where I would rehearse my company, my young company, I found places in Harlem. Maybe it was double fold. Maybe it was called so I wouldn't have to travel too far to go to rehearsals, and also because of the energy in Harlem. Finally, we were at four places before I had my established place, which was at 290 Lenox Avenue on 125th Street and Lenox Avenue, called, and now it's called Malcolm X Boulevard. And we were established there for many years. The energy of the other arts organizations in Harlem, we actually all knew each other. Odelco, which is the Black Theater Awards, was in our same building. I invited them into that building. Roger Furman's New Federal Theater was in our own building. We bounced ideas off of each other. Right down the street was Barbara Ann Tears National Black Theater. We're always helping each other, rehearsing here. You're going to give us this to help us with that, and you're going to do this for the dance. And then there were, oh, the Harlem Cultural Council, which started dance, which supported Dance Mobile, where we traveled all around the 5 boroughs to do showcases for dance. Um, Jesse DeVore, he had an organization called Voices Incorporated. There was um, Ernie McClintock, who had his theater company there on Amsterdam, about 100. They were on and on, but we were all buddies. Sometimes we'd have.
You weren't competing with each other.
No, we were lifting each other up. There was a dance theater of Harlem, which is a little bit farther. It wasn't right off of 125th Street. There was the Harlem School of the Arts. Sometimes you could do rehearsals or collaborate, do some dance for the other people. I remember, but we would, in the New Lafayette Theater, what it is also they would, we would be always at their events and telling people about each other's events. We were just almost like a family. If we family, informal family, and sometimes it was formal. I remember somebody came from the city, or I don't know where I can't remember now. They were the tourist board. I remember they came and said, we're going to gather all of you people who are the artists, and we're going to have meetings with you because tourism is coming to Harlem. We're like, really?
Can you imagine?
They said, this was like in the early 80s, mid 80s. Tourism is, so we started having meetings, and they wanted our ideas. So people can come, they can have dinner, then they can go to the theater. They can go to National Black Theater, or they could come earlier and they could come and visit your dance studio. And then they could have dinner at Sylvia's. And then they could do this and that. I'm like, okay. Well, the tourism that we saw during that period when I was at my company through the 80s, we saw the tourism in the churches.
Ah, yes.
So the tourism, the buses started coming to the Black churches in Harlem, and I think it's continued to this day.
Absolutely, it does.
So that we didn't see the other part, and so it didn't happen necessarily the other part.
It didn't happen that soon. It has definitely happened.
It has happened. It has happened, and at the same time, what has happened is that people of, as my mother would say, people of different persuasions. That's the way my mother would say. Different persuasions have actually become residents of Harlem.
Absolutely. It's very diverse now.
Yeah, it's very diverse. It was not so diverse when I was there. Some of the diversity was only in the people who owned some of the shops, and at night they would go home into Long Island or wherever they lived. And people who worked in the state office building. And then there were people who were part of the community, but who were a Caucasian. However, they had been there a long time. They were just there, but they didn't live there.
Right.
But we knew
let me
them.
remind folks, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking to Dianne McIntyre. It's so awesome to talk to her. We're getting a history lesson, all different kinds of history. So much richness. You are the best storyteller ever, Dianne. I just love it. Yeah. And we don't have that much more time left. So I have to do something that I always want to know, because Dreamleapers was created to inspire people to access and activate their dreams, to live their dreams. And I bring people on who are doing that. And I listened to you on an interview that you did some time ago where you talked about something that I think is a little bit unusual for somebody in the arts. Often parents, teachers, others, the community says, you shouldn't do that. You won't be able to earn a living. You know, there's a lot of pushback for many people who choose to go into the arts. And so they kind of often are working against the people they love. And you have a very different story about Cleveland, Ohio, and your family's support of your vision that you had as a little girl. Can you please talk about that?
Yes, I'll talk about it. And then before we finish, I want to talk about the name of your podcast, Dreamleapers.
Okay.
Which should I do first? Okay,
Just
I better answer your question first. Okay,
okay.
so I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I live in Cleveland, Ohio again after being in New York for over 30 years. And I continue working with the New York artists and organizations and also in Cleveland. When I came up in Cleveland, and still today, it's not strange to want to be an artist. My father, who passed in 2005, he was born in 1914. My father had friends who were artists, photographers, painters. I say my father because he was almost a native Clevelander. My mother was from upstate New York and she came here in the 1940s. So, and there was that energy that it was not strange. The number of people I met when I got to New York who were from Cleveland were a lot. They were cultivated. They could become artists and don't think that is strange. People, some other people I know, they were in other places. If they danced, people thought they did that just for a hobby. I was like, oh, isn't that sweet? You dance, da 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 da. So here, if you want to make that career, it was okay. My father was said always do whatever it is you want to do. If you want to go that direction, that's good. He was always in my corner for me to be a choreographer, dancer, whatever. He was,
And Diane, just to jump in for a second, you took dance classes from starting at a very young age, including ballet and modern dance, which the modern
yes,
dance usually happens later, right?
right. My dance teacher, my ballet teacher um, was Elaine Gibbs Redmond. She passed in August 2023. And 3 weeks ago, we had a big celebration of her. All
Nice.
the brown and black children around the Cleveland area went to her dance classes, and I studied ballet with her through my high school years. At the time, we didn't know till we were grown that we were not so welcome into the white ballet studios. We didn't know that. It was okay. We had everything with Elaine. We called her Elaine later. I mean, when I was grown. And at the same time, well, when I got a little older, say like 9 or 10, I started with Elaine at 4. When I was 9, there was a program in my after school program that was a modern dance workshop. I did that all the way through my high school years. Modern dance was more rare. I'm telling you, Cleveland was and is advanced. Why did we have modern dance? Most modern dance for people, you had to get it when you got in college. Even today, little children usually, now they call it contemporary, but they didn't even have contemporary back then.
I
My
remember
dance,
even here in New York,
no,
I mean, when my daughter was taking ballet, taking dance, she had to do ballet first. Absolutely.
that's what they say. Yes,
Mhm.
even in New York City, it was here in Cleveland, modern dance was elevated to a high art form. And so that was, we also have the Caramoo Theater, which
Yes.
was it was it's the oldest black producing theater in the country, and at the same time it has always been multicultural, multiracial from the beginning. That was part of the energy of Cleveland. And even today the people are, oh yes, I think I'm going to be a dancer. Now they'll go on to a university, like that. It cultivates the arts. I'm very happy that I,
And so you knew, Diane, from a very young age that you wanted to pursue dance. And so by the, it was early on, shortly after college that you came to New York and you were already set. You knew what you wanted to do and you were doing it.
yeah, not only dance, I wanted to choreograph
Right.
because I choreographed starting at 7 years old.
7 years
Yeah,
old. So old.
yeah, I had my first production at 7. Okay,
That is
in,
awesome.
in the library, and I was just got my friends from the around the street and in my school. And a friend of mine, Judy Fox, our school at that time was very racially integrated. It was after a certain time, it became primarily black because it was, I was in that in between era when it was before white flight. People, if they don't know what white flight means, they can Google it. Okay, so I was in that. So I had friends who were of different, had Asian friends, Caucasian, African American. So all those people were in my first production. And
At
Judy
7 years
Fox's
old.
at
That's
7,
awesome.
and Judy Fox's older sister, who was 12, played the piano. So we had live music then too.
From the
Yeah.
start. Okay, we just have a couple minutes left. What did you want to say about Dreamleapers?
Dreamleapers reminds me of Langston Hughes,
Hmm.
Dream Keepers. Dream Keepers. I'm trying to think of. So one year I was invited to be in a film of St. Clair Bourne, brilliant filmmaker.
Sure.
And the film is called Langston Hughes, The Dream Keeper. And the word dream keeper is in one of his poems. And so when I see, and so people could look that up, it's probably online. Langston Hughes, The Dream Keeper, a
Beautiful.
film that was made maybe in the late 1980s. And so I
Yeah.
think of that when you said your podcast is called Dream Leapers. It
Yeah.
also has history in it because
Love
we
that.
are the dream. We keep the dreams, and with us keeping the dreams, we leap on to new dimensions.
Oh, that's beautiful. What a powerful way to end. Thank you, Diane. It is always a pleasure to talk to you and to share just a few of your wonderful stories. I feel uplifted, and I'm sure that everyone who's tuned in does as well. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank all of you. Thank all of you for tuning in. I know you enjoyed Diane as much as I did. I'm just feeling so full. Thank you for being with us. And until next time, have a great day and make it count.